A good early Sunday afternoon to you, Roger Hill, Wuthering Heights, VELCO Weather Hazards Forecaster. Looking at the last several days here, what we can see is basically right here, of course, is Ian cutting across Florida out into the Atlantic and then making its third landfall and then producing an area of precipitation generally to the south and east of our region. Most of the convection is now worked off the coast, and we're just left with some occasional high cloudiness that will straddle some parts of Vermont today and over the course really of the next 24 hours, and then it's pretty much out of here. And we're looking at a broad area of higher pressure sort of reinforcing and building back into the region with a cool air mass. Now, a couple things to note is this big broad area of higher pressure. This is a ridge of higher pressure in the upper atmosphere. We have a kind of an atmospheric river kind of set up here with a pretty elongated frontal boundary off to the west coming out of the Pacific, and how that pretty much stays that way with that big upper ridge and then a trough downstream from that. And that's what's basically guiding the leftovers of Ian. And currently this is the rainfall left over from Ian, still spinning away and raining itself out over parts of the middle Atlantic and into the eastern Ohio Valley, parts of West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and so on, into a little bit of southern New England. Just high cloudiness for us, a little bit of a threat into southern Vermont late yesterday, but that has moved on out, and that's about the end of that. And for comparison, we have the GFS ensemble on the right side and the European deterministic on the left-hand side. Comparing notes, we have this big area of higher pressure that's putting a block on the leftovers, and it's scooting on out to the east, not to the north and east. We have these barometric pressure is pretty high, but it eventually becomes a whole lot weaker with a ridge, and you can see that as it's kind of losing its look. But the area of high pressure is still kind of holding at bay this leftover here, which is kind of spinning off the coast, and that's going to continue, it looks like, in the middle part of next week for some time to come, throwing a little bit of high cloudiness at us, but nothing particularly amazing. That area of higher pressure will stay that way until beyond the period. This is into the day on Friday. A little bit of rain shower activity works on it. It doesn't look like we'll see thunderstorms, but this area of higher pressure is packing some cold air. You can see with these bluer colors here, this is dynamically colder aloft, cold enough that it might even give us a little bit of wet snowflake action once we get basically into Friday or late in the weekend. However, it does not look like it's going to stick to the valley floors, but something we'll be watching. It looks like it's mostly right about the changeover time, the very end of this outlook period, and into this coming weekend for some rather chilly temperatures. So what we can see here is really not a whole lot in the way of precipitation, and even the QPF is looking like it's very, very low. We're talking about 0.2 of an inch way well around the corner, and that's going to be over this coming weekend. However, to note, it does look like we can see the 850 millibar temperatures will be pretty warm for the middle part of the week, where we actually get into the 70s, and then temperatures make a pretty sharp drop here with a cold front. And you'll note that we're below the 0 degree isotherm, so cold enough to snow with any kind of precipitation. Indeed, we do have a little bit of precipitation to look at. What does that mean? Well, look at this. This is just beyond the period, so precipitation type, starting to indicate just a little bit of snow there. And in terms of actual snowfall, maybe we might get a little trace amounts here in some locations. And no real wind to worry about in terms of wind. So we're staying well under 40 knots. That's all good news. So no gradient winds with this incoming colder air mass, despite the fact that we're going to really cool things down. Looking at the 7-day total QPF, we can see that most of the heavy rainfall is really in the middle Atlantic states and kind of exiting east into the Atlantic. This is 1/100th of an inch, and this is the driest area right here across parts of southern New England. A little bit wetter in the northern part, and that's going to be from weather systems moving in after Thursday into Friday, just some minor rain shower activity, but the main storm track is up here. And we do have anomalously cold temperatures in the area across the eastern part of the country, and all the warmth is basically through Alaska and some parts of Western Canada, part of Greenland, and so on and so forth. Fairly warm over the oceans as well. Speaking of which, sea surface temperatures well above normal, and this is our ongoing La Nina. So max high temperatures over the next 5 days. The meteorological output statistics basically neutral, a little warmer to the north and east and to the Canadian Maritimes, and also to the west of us, a little colder to the south, and this is where the leftovers of Ian is kind of raining itself out. About 3 days later, we do see a little bit of a cool down start to creep in across the Great Lakes, a good part of the northern part of the U.S., still into the southeastern U.S., and still remaining a little bit above normal in the Canadian Maritimes with a slight budging in of colder air. Not a whole lot to talk about in the tropics. We have one system that's come off the south of the Cape Verde Islands, and this system is not a problem. There could be something very late in the period, mostly beyond our period here, that could affect the Southwest Caribbean. And this is the European ensemble, and this is the indication with this easterly wave that's worked off West Africa, southwest of the Cape Verde Islands. Looks like it would take a track and then get turned out to sea. This is the only interest to land in central parts of Mexico, the south of the Yucatan, and central parts of Honduras, Guatemala, and so on and so forth. And last but not least, I want to show the European ensemble forecast, and this is going past this period here, this outlook period. So we're heading through Friday, and lo and behold, we do have some snow to talk about, and it does look like by the time we get to somewhere along through Saturday into Sunday, we're talking about a little bit of snow in the mountains, potentially the Adirondacks, some of the higher elevations, the Whites, and then the Connecticut River, northern part there, and the northern parts of the Connecticut Lakes region, and back into the backbone of Maine, and of course up north of the St. Lawrence Valley, much better chances for a little bit of snow. This is valid, it looks like in the morning hours on Sunday beyond the period, the 9th of October. That's it from here. Roger Hill, Wuthering Heights. Thanks for watching.